Hello, everybody. This is Greg. I just finished watching the movie Black Panther, and I just want to give a review. And I'm here in the kitchen with my wife and my kids, and pretty much right now, my wife's making some matzo ball soup, and she's making that ready for us. And anyway, so the thing I finished watching the movie, and right now it's like I just want to give you a synopsis of what the movie was about without giving you any spoilers. I might give you some spoilers, but no, I'm not going to spoil anything for you. I won't do it. What I will do, I'll talk very succinctly about the things that really jumped out at me. And so I was already talking to Amy about this before, but I said let me just go ahead and just start recording because it was just flowing so nicely. Um, for you, those of you who don't know, Black Panther is a Marvel character developed by Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, and back in 1966. And what it depicts is an African prince who becomes king of a country called Wakanda, a country of great technology hidden in plain sight. Now, here's the review. The review is there's a lot of things in this movie, and I'm gonna do my best not to explain. Well, to explain, but not to spoil it for you. Okay, I'm gonna do my best not to spoil it without anything. So I'll tell you straight off the bat. The Black Panther was a movie that I really enjoyed. I enjoyed watching it because certain movies you watch and you watch for different things, and there's always like a huge amount of hype around everything. So when you go to see a movie, you kind of like with expectation, and then you get like let down and all that stuff. But there was no letdown in this movie when I was watching it. It was one of the things I was watching and I noticed about it was that it had a nice tempo to it. It had a nice movie-esque tempo that kept you going and kept you thinking about stuff. So what happened was Black Panther. The I want to say first that his suit was a side issue. His suit was not the main character in the story. If anything, this story, there's several things. I'm going to give you a list of things that this story brought up. So first thing I wrote is Black Panther. Second thing, under that I wrote subtitle Lion King. The next one is Batman and Respect. For the Lion King aspect, there was a part where there were moments in it where you just felt like you're watching the movie Lion King, and the colors were like you're watching the live version of Lion King, which I've never seen, but I've seen the posters for the live version of Lion King, and I've seen a lot of the pictures of them on Pinterest and things like that of Lion King. Anyway, so what happens is that I thought about how this looked like Lion King, and it had the kind of same aspect of it where Simba has to become king, in place of his father who died, and so it had a very similar thing to that. So when I watched that, it was like a becoming king story, and of a very highly functional, very efficient society, right? See, there's those moments of Lion King. There's a couple of points that really spoke to me as Lion King was one the stars. They had a thing about the stars, and they had a thing about the sunrise, and that's all I'm going to give you for that. Next one, there's a Batman-esque type feel to it. There's like there's an aspect of his gadgetry and his suits and things like that, and things the suit can do. But that's kind of like a side issue. That's not really the main story. The main story, which I'm not going to tell you all the details to it, but I'll tell you a gist of it, is a lot about respect. And so the Lion King is one part, Batman is another. Respect is a big part of the story, and in this story was there was a lot of respect for women in this story, respect for parents, there was respect for rite of passage, respect of culture. I thought that this movie was very good in terms of that. It showed the proper value of respect in the family and respect in society as general, and also as humanity as large. So you have an aspect where people are like, it's an individual respect, it's a family respect, it's a society respect, it's like a world respect, And this movie was a lot about that. Next thing too, on point two, it talked about black culture a lot. There was a lot of we are family moments in this story that I really enjoyed watching. And I felt as I was watching this movie, I'm from the Caribbean. I'm from an island called Dominica in the Caribbean, and I came here when I was 2 years old. So I most of my family that I learned about was from my relatives, my parents, my mom and dad, my sister, my aunts and uncle, and a lot of culture from my grandmother and my grandma on both sides, and my aunts and my uncles. And so they would come around every so often. So there was a big cultural type thing where we had cultural ingrained, but I never learned how to speak the language, so I can't speak it. A couple words here and there, but there's an atmosphere of culture that you have. Our culture. Dominica was once a country that was British. Before that was French, and then before that was indigenous. So it's indigenous, then it became a French colony, then became a British colony, and it came to independence in 1978. And so anyway, long story short, it was a British colony, lastly, and a lot of the culture from my home country is rooted in the family and family and respect for family and how family gets together and do things together. So in this movie, there's a lot of that. It was a strong black culture that you don't see too often and depicted in movies, or you see that too often in society. Tend to see the bad stuff. You tend to people getting carried away in prison, or people getting shot, or people hauled away, or this or that, and this person did this or that. But for the most part, though, it's like when there's a cultural aspect, and what I thought was interesting too was the whole thing about the Black Panthers and the name the Black Panther. There's the militia group from the 1960s, and what happened was there was when I first heard about Black Panther, I mentioned this before in my previous review, that there was an aspect of like I wasn't sure if the Black Panther was related to the Black Panther Party, but then the reason that the party existed was to deal with police brutality and things like that, and so a lot of it comes from the culture, you know going back. You have civil rights. Before civil rights, we have America had a big slave situation there where they had slaves for many years, and so in doing so, America, land of the free, home of the brave, land of inalienable rights, all men are created equal. It was really hard because in terms of like how slavery ended around the world, or in namesake around the world, but when it was in America, it was a long time. So there was a lot of like hate crimes and things done because people were black, and people didn't like them, or didn't like us black people because of our skin color. And what happens is like there was just, even to this day there's still racism and things that hold it back culture. But one of the things that was interesting in this movie was that it showed what a grand society would look like if racism wasn't a big, wasn't prevalent. I wrote a paper back in college about like who is the true black, and it was referring to the different types of black people in this throughout the world. You have the talk to Aborigines, you have the African black, you have the Caribbean black, you have the American black, and you have different blacks like all across the world. So I wrote a paper about that regarding who was and what makes a person truly black, and referring to. I'll post it somewhere at some point, but it talked about the nationalism, and in this movie, it talks strong about nationalism and also about the strength of a family and the strength of the individual. And so there's an aspect of protecting our own at the expense of others, but then that kind of becomes a problem later, and that kind of goes to show about this kind of like that. There's this when stitches, snitches get stitches. There's a phrase like that. It said about people come around looking for Joe. Nobody knows Joe. Nobody knows you're on here. Nobody knows Joe, kind of thing. Where it's that we're talking about turning people in that have done crimes and things like that and done things that are wrong. There's an aspect of like protecting the whole for the sake and disregarding the one, and reversing, protecting the one and disregarding the whole. This movie was very good in terms of like explaining and just showing that we are people together, all of us. I like also there was aspect of it's the how truth reveals things. Talks also about keeping secrets and how secrets can really damage things, and how when truth comes in, how truth seems to damage things, but actually it fixes things, as opposed to how a secret pretends to keep things going, but it actually damages things. The other aspect is like you have a thing about in part three. You have colors. You have colors. You have when I looked at all the colors that were there, there's warmth. There's warmth colors. There's strength. There's beauty. But one of the things I really liked about this movie was that the unspoken strength in it. If I could sum up this entire movie as anything, I'd call it strength. One word to sum it all up is strength. It shows strength together versus strength apart. And when people got together to put things together, to do things together, they were able to do mighty and great things, as opposed to just trying to keep away and keep secrets. So, things I didn't like. I'm coming down to the end here. I have 30 more seconds. Things I didn't like. I didn't like. I'm beginning to not like watching movies in 3Ds or 4Ds. I think it's just watching a movie as is, where you just kind of your feet planted, watching the screen in 2D is kind of where you should be. Other thing too. I thought it was. I thought it was just a very beautiful movie. To sum it up real quick, I would say that it was a strong movie. It was very formidable and it was very beautiful. I recommend seeing it.